the other bill in the White House, there is no question that you did inhale and you continue to suck to this day.
With sports talk radio, you can slander and libel people every day, and nobody seems to care.
Who's to blame for this? Who's going to take the wrath of your disappointment?
I think sometimes they get a little harsh on players and really, I guess, invade the privacy of their lives.
We don't care if we piss people off.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Here's the simple answer. Radio is free. You don't like it, turn it off.
And I know what you're thinking. Everybody's going, listen, Rich, you promised we would not talk about chick sports.
I listen to National Public Radio. I'd rather be informed than misinformed.
He's a wussy. I never liked him in Michigan.
Life is too damn short to be screaming and hanging up with people.
I'm almost a rumor monger.
We have a hand in some firings.
You know, I'm known as the coach killer, the assassin.
The athletes are listening. They'll lie to you and say they're not. They'll say, no, we never listen. But I'm telling you right now, they listen.
Opinions, information, and feedback fly with lightning speed and impact in sports radio's interactive world. Our topic on Outside the Lines, Sports Talk Mania.
As ticket prices and player salaries leave some fans feeling isolated from their games, one way that fans can stay connected, can be part of the debate, is sports talk radio. Talking sports on the radio is nothing new, but now stations program nothing but sports talk. The stream of information and personalities, opinions and controversy is supercharged and turned full blast on fans who cannot get enough. So turn your radio down. You're next.
You're on the team, Sports Radio.
Tony Kornheiser back with you on the team.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you today? Mike and the Mad Dog on the fans.
Sports talk has boomed.
Well, you can hear us in 39 states.
Coach McGilvray, or whatever his name is, should be fired immediately.
I say Rockets in 6. Akeem too quick for the Shack.
And essentially, what we've got in talk radio is just the electronic bar of the 1990s.
9 years ago, all sports radio didn't exist. 5 years ago, only 4 stations did it. Now, about 130 stations are sports talk full-time, with more than 1,500 stations carrying some sports talk radio. All sports is rarely an unqualified business success. A station in Washington is struggling, and another in Los Angeles has abandoned the format. Scores of other stations squeak by. But in New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Dallas, and Minneapolis, all sports radio stations rate very well with young men, a coveted audience for advertisers. Fans who listen and dial in.
People come to us and are drawn to us to say, hey, put the game in perspective for me. Why did we win? Why did we lose? Where do we go from here? Is our coach staying? Is our coach good? Is our team good? Is our player good? It's about opinions. It's about analysis. It's about perspective.
It's about callers.
And my baseball question...
Callers like Delwyn Hinkle. At 6:44 a.m., Delwyn Hinkle has already listened to 45 minutes of sports talk radio.
My clock radio goes off a few minutes before 6, and I wake up to Norm Hiskes.
How long can Nate Newton keep doing this?
From radios in the bathroom and the kitchen, pour a steady stream of sports speak. The backbeat for Hinkle's morning routine. Another radio in his home office brings him the show that Hinkle, a self-employed computer consultant, has somewhat arranged his life around.
Catman! Hey, Dylan R.
A year ago, Hinkle crossed over from passive listener to call-in regular. Now he's part of the show.
Delwyn R. in Dallas, you're on the ticket.
Well, I guess we need to talk about Dean Palmer. That starts with P, that rhymes with T, and that stands for trouble.
Only a small percentage of listeners, perhaps just 2%, ever pick up the phone. The rest simply listen to opinions that can ignite controversy.
You know what, Mason? You're the ball at the end of the game.
If I'm Mason at the end of the game yesterday, if I'm in the locker room after the game and I'm Anthony Mason, I'm kind of apologetic. I didn't do the job. I was 1 for 4 in the last 2 minutes on a foul line, the biggest game of the year. Shut up.
If I were a player looking for a new contract, or a general manager, or even an owner, I would shiver in my boots at the thought of an all-sports radio station coming to town. I'd be scared to death.
What they really resent, even more than me, is they resent the guy who calls up and just hammers them. And it's a nameless, faceless person who just hammers them.
I mean, you guys, you should be ripping Patrick Ewing from, you know, I mean, come on. This
Yeah,
is
you
unbelievable.
can't rip him. Come on.
Sports talk radio is an interactive world, fluid and fickle. It's emotional with immediate feedback. With 3/4 of Americans driving alone to work, the cellular phone boom adds spice by expanding callers beyond those at home to an audience that's about 90% male.
It's okay to be a man on the air. You can say some irreverent, politically incorrect things. You can get away from a lot of things here that you couldn't at other radio stations.
They're selling testosterone.
It's not just sports. It's a shared experience. It's electronic male bonding, and often it's politically incorrect, entertaining, and profitable.
All right, I'm a fan. First call is Pete in Brooklyn. Pete, how are you?
Hey, guys.
All Sports Radio began 8 years ago in New York at WFAN. Mike Francesa and Chris Russo, Mike and the Mad Dog, each make $500,000 a year. Their station is now a major information source, a player in the sports culture of the nation's largest market.
I think other stations have looked to FAN as being the prototypical station to do their thing.
That's where Spencer Kendrick got his idea.
1310, the ticket.
Leaving Wall Street, returning to Dallas to spend most of his net worth on a small AM station. KCTK, the ticket, boasting of sports with an attitude.
We call ourselves your wife's worst nightmare. And to a lot of people, we are.
You cringe at some of the things that you hear on your own station?
Yes, I do.
To the hard line.
That would be us.
Just a few thoughts on the cancerous polyp of a broadcaster known as Bill Walton. Bill, unlike the other Bill in the White House, there is no question that you did inhale and you continue to suck to this day.
We don't care if we piss people off.
The station's birth announcement was a 40-foot jockstrap on a billboard at a major Dallas interchange. And the measure of its success? After 18 months, the most affluent listenership in town and an impending sale at a substantial profit to a competitor's parent company. Sports talk radio is a balance of information and entertainment with heavy doses of personality.
If there's one thing, especially here in Dallas, that the callers and the listeners can sniff out, it's a fraud.
Yes.
If you're a fraud, they're going to sniff you out.
If you're
and not only that, they're going to expose you.
The good talk show hosts have to be more knowledgeable than anybody. And I think a lot of times you don't get the credit for that because they think you're loud, you're wild, you're nutty.
All of talk radio, and particularly sports talk, is a prime example of that expression that, what is it, 90% of everything is crap.
There's a bunch of young guys who've never been reporters, who've never gone into a locker room, who've never said anything tough about an athlete and then had to face the athlete the next day, and they're just mouthing off. They're just gas bags and morons who go on and on and on.
I also want to talk a little bit about UCLA going out and buying themselves a softball World Series championship. And I know what you're thinking. Everybody's going, listen, Rich, you promised we would not talk about chick sports. Okay.
If sports radio is the electronic bar of the 90s, step up for a cold one in L.A.
I was a bartender by trade. I tended bar, waited tables. I was a doorman at the Hard Rock Cafe in San Francisco. That was the last real job I had.
Rich Herrera's current job is on the air, 8 to 10 every night at KMAX in Los Angeles.
We're going to talk, I'm going to yell, I'm going to scream, I'm going to tell you you're stupid, and then we'll shake hands, we're all done. And if we could talk about chicks, sports, and liquor, it's fun.
Of all the events he talks about, how many does he see in person?
Let's see, I got kicked out of the Laker game. And when I go to cover an event, because I'm more of a fan than the guys, the scribes standing out there, or the TV guys and everything, I'll just stand out there and go, oh, my God, you know, I got to meet Cal Ripken last week. I met Cal Ripken Jr. Oh!
Back in Dallas, Delwyn Hinkle's day continues at a baseball game where he prefers the radio call to ballpark ambiance.
Low into what?
Yeah, curveball.
On all four of them.
Absolutely.
Nearly 17 hours after he awakened to sports talk radio, Delwyn is still plugged in at a post-game show.
Because I'm self-employed and a lot of time I spend by myself, what happened is the sports talk shows became my friends. It's almost like a virtual office, to use a computer term. It doesn't really exist anywhere, but I know that, from 11 to 2, I know that Herman Mesquite is listening to the show that I'm listening to, and Dr. Matt is, and John Caffey, and Chicken Fried, and all the guys that have become friends of mine because we share a radio button. And that's pretty cool.
That connection's not just local and not just in large cities. Smaller markets are part of this explosion through networks and syndication. Programs such as the fabulous Sports Babe, sent to over 130 affiliates from here at ESPN Radio, Ron Barr's Sports Byline USA, or Pete Rose on the Sports Fan Radio Network. These shows give fans a national forum for their opinions and give all cities a chance to be a part of the boom in talking sports.
I cut a new 3-year deal based on how many times I was accurate or whether I was entertaining. I guarantee you, my job is about ratings, and I'm not going to get ratings unless I'm entertaining and opinionated and brash.
When Outside the Lines continues, how accurate are sports talk radio shows, and how fair?
Both of stations like The Fan and The Ticket. Successful stations offer a mix of information and entertainment, but information doesn't make a station, the hosts do. There's a whole lot of showbiz in that, and where in this equation do you place fairness and accuracy? Armin Katayan considers the issue.
Well, isn't that refreshing to know what Mark Carrion thinks, considering he sucks?
Welcome back to the world of sports talk radio. 99.5 miles per hour on your AM dial.
Worry about fielding a fly ball before you start bitching and crying.
He's a human reject.
A bunch of schleps, schmucks, and putts from Pittsburgh.
Fueled by a volatile mix of fact.
What he's done this year has made more contact with the ball.
An opinion.
Yeah, bottom line, Brian Murray's a bum.
Insight and outrage.
Ron Schuler getting some of it back in his face because he's such an idiot.
We're trying to create a reaction, a passion, thinking, whether it's nonsense or it's really accurate in terms of the fan talking it or me talking it. We're talking.
What's up with the Phoenix Suns, man? What's going on with them?
Increasingly, the talk is more provocative, more personal than ever.
I do want to say is a loser, off wife beater. This guy, they found a track record on him as long as like the Melrose Mile on his domestic disputes.
Moving a mile a minute, they fly from one topic to the next, reciting stats, inciting callers.
All right, so you're tired, and I'm tired of you.
Driven by a numbers game all their own.
Our business is about listeners and ratings and ears. I mean, we try to rein it in as much as we can. But again, here's the simple answer. Radio is free. You don't like it, turn it off.
Some sports talkers steer down the safer path, backing comment and criticism with fact.
You've got to have your facts straight before you come on the air. But that doesn't mean that you're doing a fact-dominated show.
But more than ever, it's style over substance on the talk show circus, where journalistic principles often take a back seat to shtick.
Well, first, you're not reporting. You're not a journalist, whatever that word be, journalist. You're an entertainer.
You know, really, I'm almost a rumor monger. To some extent, not even me, not me, but what I represent.
Do you see yourself as an entertainer, as a journalist?
Totally an entertainer.
Who's another wife beater loser, and you know, I hope he gets his Achilles ripped while the knee gets shattered.
29-year-old Scott Farrell of KNBR in San Francisco never stops talking, raging, engaging, doing the dance, as he calls it, at the speed of sound.
Hey, man, if I got to be this bad seed, bad apple, broken egg with a bad attitude, raggedy egg, if I got to be the Stromboli, loud, beer-drinking guy, I'll tell you one thing, they'll never forget me.
Ratings for his show have doubled since his arrival at KNBR last year, after disturbing the peace on stations from Williams, Arizona to Las Vegas. He's already got a cable TV show, his act topped only by his ego.
Industry people know that I got a gift. I feel blessed. I mean, I got something that only a few guys have. I think there's a handful. I can count them on one hand. I'm talking about Howard. I'm talking about Rush. I'm talking about Imus. But certainly not many people know how to do the dance.
Ballistic in the bay for the Farrell.
It was here by the beach in Florida that Farrell says he crafted his skills. Not at some small station, but rather a unique training ground for sports talk radio. Pouring beers at a local oyster bar.
I was just sitting there getting fat on knowledge and on delivery and on passion with people. If I can stare some drunk in the face and get him going and get him irate and get him screaming at me and handing me his money at the same time.
Hey, can I have a beer?
Hey, yeah, and pop him because he likes that Zamboni, I think. Isn't he the guy, Deese?
Today, Farrell fires away about beer, point spreads, and anything else that dares cross the path of this former Indiana University journalism grad.
One of the things you learn in journalism school, there's two things really that are the most important.
Right.
Accuracy and fairness.
Right.
Are those important to you?
I think I skipped the second day when they were teaching it about the fairness. I mean, I don't think, in essence, every day that the guys that are on sports radio across the country are fair.
Farrell says overall his act is based on facts, but his obsession to be the biggest, baddest voice around can be dangerous.
I want you to watch yourself here.
What's Ty Wheatley's role in New York Giants?
Simple. Put him in camp and watch him get popped. He'll probably lose a knee in week 10. He's a wussy. I never liked him in Michigan. He sat out. He's like, oh, my knee. I don't want to risk the financial thing.
Now, let me read you a couple things about Ty Wheatley. In his entire career, he only missed 2 games.
Right.
It was his shoulder, not his knee, that was hurt.
Yeah, I believe it.
Second all-time in rushing, 4,186 yards. Third all-time at Michigan with 688 rushes. Now, you're calling him a wuss. You're calling him a guy who doesn't get it done on the field. The statistics say otherwise.
He's going to be a great pro, and there's your flavor. There's your anti-Farrell. You know why? Because as a kid, my parents every single week forced me to go to Ann Arbor to watch my mother's alma mater.
But wait,
march
let's
out
not
of there
talk
in the
about family.
van.
Let's
So
not
I
talk
hate
about
Michigan.
family.
I
Let's
think
not talk about family. Let's talk about accuracy.
I think it was a situation where
you know,
I've hated Michigan. So it's like there's a lot of guys that get their shot to jump on teams that or players they don't like. In this
But that's not accurate.
I'll tell you.
Is that fair to Tyrone Wheatley, though? This guy
no,
played
it's not fair. It's not fair to any of the athletes that get thrown in.
Now to talk baseball, here's 700 WLW's Andy Furman.
All right, 9 minutes.
Andy Furman is a former junior high school science teacher turned racetrack promoter turned sports talk maven at WLW, the 50,000-watt flagship station of the Cincinnati Reds.
Why does the National Enquirer sell? We want to talk about people. We want to talk about people's lives.
A few years ago, Furman dug into the personal life of former Reds pitcher Greg Swindell. Citing a Red source, he reported the team would not re-sign the pitcher because Swindell was seeking to escape a messy extramarital affair with a local woman. Furman never called Swindell, who was on a road trip at the time, for comment.
Why didn't you call Greg?
You mean in Houston? Good point. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. I just knew in my heart that I had the story and that was it. But I mean, to ask him what he thought of it, would he want to comment on it? I mean, why would I call him?
Yet Furman had no trouble putting the woman claiming she had the affair with Swindell on the air.
We don't screen calls here because this is still talk radio and she's a voice in the night like everybody else. Everybody has 10 minutes of fame on the radio and they're given credibility.
Instant credibility in a world where disembodied voices have tales to tell. And self-styled entertainers rage morning, noon, and night.
It can be very reckless, especially when you're driving out of control.
Hey, if you don't like it, roll over and choke on it and in bed.
Jeff Torborg was a nice guy who honestly tried to instill things in a team that it wasn't going to run. Ray Hanley should never have been hired. He was not head coaching material. It was one of the worst hires this town has ever seen.
Buddy Harrelson let New York intimidate him. And if New Yorkers sense that a manager is intimidated, they'll let you have it.
Bruce Coslett could have made it. I think his biggest problem was he talked 400 and coached 250.
Some would argue that WFAN is the most influential media in New York. The opinions that come out of this studio have cost players, coaches, and managers their jobs.
Chance. If they would have stopped them there, they would have had the ball and a lead.
Every afternoon, Mike Francesa and Chris Mad Dog Russo talk sports on WFAN. They analyze, criticize, praise, and punish players, coaches, managers, and owners. And they believe they have the power to make sure that those who aren't getting it done get out of town.
Well, I've had coaches say, you know what, I think you really started the ball rolling to get me fired. I don't know if that's true. You know what, they started the ball. If they didn't lose the games, they wouldn't have any problems. There wouldn't be any problems. I just try to always be fair.
I think we can be really more a pain in the neck more than anything else. I think sometimes people give the media and WFAN a little bit too much credit for having this kind of incredible impact. If the stars are aligned right and something bad happens, we probably can push that person or that team over the edge.
This is a team that has dug its own grave so many times. The one thing that the coaches and the people who are opponents to talk radio are totally right about is it is by nature a negative process. Losing is better than winning. Bad stories are better than good stories. That's the nature of the beast.
The aggressiveness of WFAN is not something unique to New York City. Today, the power of sports talk is becoming a force across the country.
Sports Radio 950, KJR. I'm Mike Gastineau. It's good to have you with us today.
It was a classic case of the power of sports talk radio. Last June, Sonics coach George Karl orchestrated a blockbuster deal, a trade that would send Sean Kemp to the Bulls for Scottie Pippen. Calling into the station, the fans spoke, and the owner listened.
The response on KJR, which is also owned by Sonics owner Barry Ackerley, was so vehemently opposed to the deal because of Kemp's popularity, and coupled with the fact they're going into a new facility next year, he did not want to turn off the fans with such an unpopular move.
Beat writer Mike Kahn watched as the Sonics owner pulled out of the deal, a move that had a lasting impact on head coach George Karl.
Barry Ackerley just pulled the rug out from under him, and nothing could have humiliated him more. And I do think that that day had such a pronounced effect on this team this year, the whole year, and why the team broke down, because George's confidence and George's just sense of well-being began to break down at that point, and I don't know that he ever got it back.
If you're running a business and you're thinking about making a major move, and you hear that 90% of your customers don't like the anticipated move, I think you'd be nuts not to pay attention to that.
This spring in Chicago, White Sox manager Gene Lamont was the target of WSCR and WMVP. The two all-sports stations in the Windy City hammered him day in and day out.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm surprised it took this long. You know, I've only been here a month and a half. Why did it take the extra 2 weeks?
Gene Lamont didn't prepare the team right, didn't motivate the team right. His strategy was very, very questionable.
Following the team's miserable start of 11 wins and 20 losses, Lamont was fired.
If he was on the edge, there's no question that I pushed him. I mean, I'm known as the coach killer, the assassin, the guy that goes after even successful coaches. Because I think coaches do have a big role. And I think Gene Lamont did have a big role in what happened in the Chicago White Sox. And I wasn't going to let it continue any longer.
Now all eyes and ears are zeroing in on Lamont's successor, Terry Bevington. It's the day-to-day pounding and criticism that's hard to take.
What sports talk can do, it gets the fans interested in the game. When they get interested in a game, they can turn the outcome. They can trade a player. They can fire a coach. No matter what anybody says, they really can.
I am a bigger and tougher critic on myself than anybody ever will be. So nobody can be more critical of myself than myself.
Don't come in here firing and saying that we said something that we didn't say.
Across town at the Score, the veterans of Chicago sports radio are at the mic. The monsters of midday, former Chicago Bear Dan Jiggets and one-time hot dog vendor Mike North. They've been on the air for 3 years now and have seen a lot of coaches come and go.
But it's not. We have a hand in some firings, but on the most part, they will never admit it.
North says he's personally responsible for running at least one coach out of town.
Vince Tobin, who was the defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. I was on him from day one, and I think eventually the ownership of the Chicago Bears heard what I was saying, heard what a lot of other guys were saying here at the Score, and I think he was gone because of it.
The Bears deny that North, or sports talk radio had anything to do with Tobin's dismissal.
Who's to blame for this? Who's going to take the wrath of your disappointment?
Some coaches in town listen, others don't. But they tell their players not to take the daily barrage of criticism to heart.
I talked to them about enough of keeping everything in perspective, and they know, as in any time with any sport, you know, when you're winning and doing good, everybody loves you and all the calls are good. So, I mean, it's part of the business, and I think our players and coaches approach it that way.
Mental masturbation is what they do. They just mess around with, you know, who would you like to trade who for, and it's, you know, it's stuff that you used to be able to go down to your local bar and sit down at a local bar and have arguments with. The worst thing about talk radio is that there are jobs that are jeopardized.
And what kind of impact does sports talk radio have in the clubhouse?
I think sometimes they get a little harsh on players and really, I guess, invade their privacy in their lives.
Just got great insight, and it's good to listen to. If you read between the lines, and you can pick some things up that can help you.
I don't listen to it. I like to listen to some nice, calm music.
Oh, they'll tell you they don't listen. But when they recite things back that you say, when you see them in the locker room, believe me, they listen. They listen plenty.
I listen to National Public Radio. I'd rather be informed than misinformed.
In 1991, Greg Jeffries was a Met in misery. He was criticized all the way from the press box to the clubhouse, and one day he'd had enough. Using WFAN, the fan in New York City, Jeffries fired back.
He faxed an open letter about his relationship with his teammates, which was not good, to the city through us.
It began with Jeffries writing that his teammates criticized and blamed him all too often. Near the end, it reads, if we can concentrate more on the games rather than complaining and bickering and pointing fingers, we would all be better off. That's how he wanted to tell his side of the story, through a letter read over the air.
Which I did, and it was a mistake. That was a flat-out mistake. That killed him with the Mets. That finished him with the Mets.
Fans listen, and fans remember. Ask Will Clark. Almost 2 months after he told listeners of his pro-labor, anti-replacement player stance on KLIF in Dallas, he was still taking heat.
570 KLIF, the talk team.
If you were such a big union guy during the strike, why didn't you walk with the umpires?
Mr. Clark, I think that some of the statements that you've made have alienated me as a Joe Public fan.
Are you sorry you said those statements about the replacement
As
player?
far as, being sorry for, statements, the way they came out, yeah, definitely.
I got caught on the short end of the stick, and, I sort of accept that. It won't happen again, I can tell you that.
Most often, the athletes and sports figures are scheduled to appear. Their upcoming segments are heavily promoted.
Rockets head coach Rudy T on KTRH.
But sometimes, they call in just like anybody else.
We had a caller, Matt in Arlington, and he was talking about that we didn't really understand their side.
And he said our side.
Our side, and what we have to do. And then he caught himself. And then we busted him. It was Matt Whiteside, a reliever for the Rangers. He called up as Matt in Arlington. And then we said, this is Matt Whiteside, isn't it? Both of us know Matt. Okay. And he goes, yeah, I really didn't want to get into that, but yeah, it is me. And then we were able to carry him on over a break and really talk about some of the strike issues.
The issue was basketball when the Bulls' Bill Wennington called in to talk about his treatment by the Score in Chicago. Seems Dan Jiggets and Mike North wanted Wennington caned after a poor performance against Orlando.
The reason I'm calling is, I was listening last week. You guys were caned. I only got caned twice, and I was rather disappointed because I had a horrendous outing. And I think I should just cane myself.
You want to cane yourself?
You can cane myself or shoot me.
He comes on the Score quite a bit, comes on the radio quite a bit, and interacts with the listeners. And that's how a guy can keep his career going, by being a popular figure in town.
Players aren't the only ones who phone in. Sometimes the guys who make the calls make the call. Jerry Reinsdorf, Wennington's boss and also the owner of the White Sox, did so to answer criticism by Jiggets and North of the Sox minority hiring practices.
I don't mind getting ripped when somebody's given an opinion or when the facts are right, but you guys were definitely a little out of line yesterday.
Okay, how were we out of line yesterday?
Well, if talk radio can be a good PR tool for management and players, then it can be a great one for agents. Bill Goodstein, representing Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden on The Fan in New York.
We talked to George about 2 weeks ago, so we talked about Darryl and Doc, actually. George was very enthusiastic about both players, who he told me he knows and has talked to in the past and admires.
2 years ago, during heated contract negotiations, Andy Bennis didn't need his agent to talk directly to management.
I mean, they knew I was going to be on, and I'm sure that they had they had their ears open.
Andy was throwing beanballs at ownership. I mean, it was hot radio. And we had to bleep him a couple of times with our delay system.
At the time, my wife really urged me not to go on the show because she knew that I was going to explode. Because I told her I'm just going to take this hour of airtime to voice my frustration.
He had a nuclear meltdown on the air.
I think a lot of coaches and players use FAN to get their points across. That's been known, you know, I think Pat Riley uses FAN in a lot of cases to sort of talk to New York.
That was the case before Game 6 with Indiana.
Patrick really has, you know, his challenge cut out for him because this whole series has been about Rick Smith. But I think he's up to it.
Coaches to players, players to teammates, agents to owners. It's not just for fans anymore. And the gang hanging around the water cooler is growing.
In a town that's got a good sports talk show and it's got a good sports talk station, coaches and athletes know that they can reach more people listening to that than they can talking to the one newspaper. Because, you know, one newspaper's got a circulation, what, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000? Good talk show, good radio stations got a circulation of a couple of million, you know, over a period of a week.
I was a resident of Illinois for 5 months.
Okay.
And I don't want to talk about that.
What do former athletes bring to this explosion in sports talk radio? We visit with Pete Rose and his new line of work when Outside the Lines continues.
Sports radio host credentials can evaporate when that host is a former athlete, and there are a number of them hosting shows. The most popular is Pete Rose with his nightly program on over 100 stations on the Sports Fan Radio Network. As Mike Tirico reports, Rose brings sports credibility and a well-known personality to a business that covets both.
Welcome, fans, to the Pete Rose Show, live from the Holiday Inn West in Boca Raton, Florida. 1-800-803-7383 is the number to call. I'm capitalizing on my love for all sports over my baseball career. I mean, it's documented that I was a great football fan. I was a great basketball fan. I've learned to love hockey, especially the Stanley Cup. Elbridge, New York.
Hello.
Chayton, what's up?
Oh, not much, Pete. How you doing?
I get the impression from listening to a lot of people talk that they can't believe they're talking to me. And I said, just pretend I'm just your next-door neighbor. You just called me up and you're talking to me. I put my pants on the same way as you did. I just got a lot of hits.
Pete the player was incomparable on the field. His uniqueness carried off the field in his managerial days when his daily pregame radio show evolved into 2-hour shows of winter hot stove chat. But Pete Rose is not the only former athlete to find success as a talk show host. In St. Louis, Dan Deerdorf parlayed his Cardinal playing days, comfort behind the microphone, and the powerful signal of KMOX radio to pave the road for retired athletes turned radio hosts. Another powerful radio station in the Midwest, Cincinnati's WLW, became a fertile breeding ground for athletes turned talkers. Bob Trumpy and Chris Collinsworth used popular local radio shows as a springboard to national TV slots. Like the other ex-Cincinnati players he learned from, Rose faces the hurdle of knocking down 2 stereotypes. What does an athlete know about being a host, and what does a baseball player know about another sport?
I don't think there's too many guys on TV that can take a phone call and talk to John Doe in Timbuktu, Texas, and say, well, I know how it feels to win a World Series. I know how it feels to lose a World Series. And I would believe that that feeling is the same whether it's an NBA championship, whether it's a Stanley Cup final, or whether it's a Super Bowl.
If talk radio's about unique personality, well, Pete's a natural. Only one man has more hits than anyone in baseball history and has been suspended from the game for life for gambling and has spent 5 months in prison for tax evasion.
Well, what's up, Bill?
Hey.
Is that Paducah, Kentucky?
Yes, sir. Little small-time fun, but
yeah, that's close to Marion, Illinois.
Excuse me?
I think Paducah's close to Marion, Illinois.
We're about, I think you stayed there a little while.
Yeah, I lived there for 5 months. I was a resident of Illinois for 5 months.
Okay.
And I don't want to talk about that. There's not too many guys, and you agree with this, who have been through what I've been through and can talk about it. I mean, Mike Tyson can talk about some things I can talk about. And so some other guys can talk about things I can talk about it. But most of the things that I talk about, and there's certain things you don't like to talk about, but you have to address them if the topic comes up, that you can talk from experience.
Rose's near quarter century as a big league player and on-field style led to friendships beyond baseball with people like Bobby Knight. Invariably, those friends become Pete's radio guests, creating a dilemma that all players turned host face. Do they avoid asking a friend the tough or uncomfortable question?
I don't think so, because I'm going to attack him or her from a fair angle. I'm going to give him or her benefit of the doubt. Don't blame baseball because Darryl Strawberry did not get a prison sentence. And if you want to know my beliefs on that, I wouldn't wish anybody to be sent away for a month, a day, an hour. And you know, I'm just hoping as a baseball fan that Darryl Strawberry understands that he got a huge break and he takes advantage of the huge break. Life is too damn short to be screaming and hanging up with people and calling them names and stuff like that. I mean, radio business, it's not the WWF. I mean, radio is entertainment. People are sitting in their living rooms or sitting in traffic. They want to laugh.
Are you a talk show host, or are you Pete Rose talking sports with listeners and athletes?
I'm a talk show host because I treat all my callers like they're very special, which they are, because the show is predicated on the callers, and the callers make the show. And you need callers, just like I'm in the restaurant business. I need people to come in the door to eat.
Now Rose, once compared to Cobb, Aaron, and Musial, compares himself to heavy hitters in his new medium.
Take G. Gordon Liddy, take Rush Limbaugh, take Larry King. They're all three one thing. They're consistent. And I'm consistent in this business, just like I think I was the most consistent baseball player ever. I didn't always have a good year, but I never had a bad year. And
Radio can be opinionated and volatile, but above all, sports radio is immediate. And that immediacy has changed how all media covers breaking stories. As Shelley Smith reports, it's also affected the relationship between the established media and sports radio, the new kid on the block. KJR Radio in Seattle reports that Carl will return. The team would not confirm this.
You go to bed at night in the newspaper business not knowing if what you wrote is still timely 8 hours later when people are reading it. Here you know it because it's instantaneous.
Michael Moore was the heavyweight champ. Tonight, he for now is out of the sport. Moore telling WJR Radio in Detroit last night that he's not going to fight again.
What you do in the newspaper business is you react. You don't pretend like you broke the story, but you take it 2 or 3 steps further.
New York radio station WFAN cited unidentified sources today claiming that Keenan's messy exit from the Rangers coaching job was the result of a conspiracy.
Sports Talk Radio has been able to sort of be the first medium to deal with the actual how, why, what of the event.
Sports news stories are not only broken and reported on talk radio, they are used as material for sports talk hosts on shows which run for hours. This uneasy partnership of news and entertainment can cause friction in the media community of a city.
It's a terrible thing, but it's the way the world works, and I'm going to tell you right now, Mickey Mantle, my hero, he's going to have a liver in a couple of weeks. I guarantee it. And then you call me and tell me how it's fair, because it is not done. The people with the status and the money are the people that get what they want in everything they do in the world.
I have no way of knowing what might the truth really be in this. The doctors are insisting that the reason he was moved up on the list is because of his condition.
While the newspaper reports on Mantle were dated by the time they hit the stands, WIP's overnight show had not only confirmed reports that a donor had been found for Mantle, but it started analyzing the situation.
Well, that's the advantage they have, is that we come out once a day and they have immediacy.
I am delighted that Mickey is, as we speak right now, apparently in the operating room getting the new liver, even as we speak. And I hope he lives to be 200. But something just doesn't feel right about it.
Sports talk radio not only has immediacy, it has opinions, often outrageous ones. WIP host Angelo Cataldi, a former investigative reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and his partner Al Morganti have adapted well to the looser world of radio. While Mantle was undergoing surgery, they debated the ethics of his situation.
Mickey Mantle get the liver overnight.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Hey, I got to tell you, Mike, I took some heat for that. But this is the way the world works. And please understand, Mickey Mantle was my hero. I loved the man. I worshipped everything he did when he played, right? But I knew, and you knew, if you think about it, this guy that means so much to people, they're not going to put him on the top of the list.
Besides WIP, one other station in Philadelphia has a sports talk show. On the afternoon show at WGMP, Stan Hochman, a Philadelphia Daily News reporter who occasionally hosts a radio show, took a more reverent approach to Mantle, a player he once covered.
Sat there and a semicircle of writers would form around, but you had to give him room because he had to stretch out those aching legs and the ice would melt and form small puddles. It's a compelling story from so many levels. The true baseball fan who knows Mantle's place as a Hall of Famer in the game, and then the other aspect, the ethical, moral aspect of Mantle moving to the top of the list for a transplant, creates all sorts of debate and lively discussion.
But that need for debate and lively discussion can play havoc with such traditional journalistic principles as fact-checking and balanced reporting.
We can get on and give our opinion. You know, I think that Mickey Mantle will go right to the top of the list. Now, what have I done to substantiate that besides interview myself for 10 seconds? Nothing. Now, if I work for a newspaper and I still write 3 columns a week for a newspaper, well, I have to go check with all the authorities, get all the background, get one side, get the other side.
The worst thing that happens to a reporter in any field, if the reporter gets to be a celebrity himself and becomes an entertainment